My daughter, Sarah, brought home the man of her dreams. His name was Leo, and on paper, he was perfect. A successful architect, charming, handsome, and he absolutely adored her. Every time I saw them together, they were the picture of happiness. He'd bring me flowers, remember my favorite type of tea, and always asked about my day. My friends were envious. They'd say, "Anna, you've hit the son-in-law jackpot," and I'd smile and nod. But deep down, a little knot of unease was starting to form in my stomach. It was just a feeling, a whisper in the back of my mind that I couldn't quite place. It started with small things. Leo had this incredible story about volunteering in a remote village in South America for a year, building schools. It was a beautiful story, one he told with such passion. Sarah's eyes would light up every time he mentioned it. But one evening, I was chatting with a friend who'd done a lot of charity work in that exact region. I casually mentioned Leo's project. My friend, who knows every NGO working there, had never heard of it. She said it was impossible for a project of that scale to go unnoticed. I brushed it off. Maybe it was a smaller, independent thing, a misunderstanding, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Then there was the family thing. Leo said his parents lived a quiet life abroad and weren't big on technology, which is why we'd never visit. He had a sister in another state he claimed to be close with. But whenever Sarah suggested a visit, he'd have a ready-made excuse. A work emergency, a prior commitment. It was always plausible, always just reasonable enough, but the pattern was undeniable. He was isolating himself, or rather, his past, from us. I tried asking Sarah about it, gently. "Honey, isn't it a bit strange? You've never even seen a photo of his parents." She'd get defensive. "Mom, you're overthinking it. He's just a private person." "Can't you just be happy for me?" I was happy for her, so happy it terrified me. What if this perfect man was a mirage? The turning point came at their engagement party. Everything was wonderful, sparkling lights, laughter, champagne. Leo gave a moving speech about how Sarah had changed his life. As he spoke, I watched him. He looked at Sarah with such adoration, but his eyes, they seemed to be scanning the room, constantly checking. Later, an old colleague of my late husband's came over to congratulate me. He was a retired private investigator. We were making small talk when he quietly said, "Your future son-in-law. He has a familiar face. Can't place it." That was it. My mother's intuition, which had been humming quietly, was now screaming. That night, I couldn't sleep. Against my better judgment, I decided to do something I never thought I would. I hired my husband's old colleague. I felt sick with guilt, like I was betraying my own daughter. But the thought of her marrying a ghost, a man with no verifiable past, was worse. A week later, the investigator called me. The news was chilling. Leo wasn't Leo. His real name was Mark, and he had a history. He wasn't a criminal, not in the legal sense, but he was a con artist. He moved from city to city, charming his way into wealthy families, getting engaged, and then disappearing with a substantial loan for a fake business venture right before the wedding. He had 2 other fiancées in 2 different states, waiting for him to return. The man my daughter was about to marry didn't exist. My perfect son-in-law was a lie. The hardest part wasn't learning the truth. The hardest part was knowing I had to break my daughter's heart to save her. Thank you for watching. My daughter Lily finally married the man of her dreams, Ben. On the surface, he was perfect, a successful lawyer, handsome, and utterly devoted to her. But as a mother, I have a sixth sense for these things. Something about Ben just felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but a knot of unease had been tightening in my stomach ever since their engagement. So when they invited me to join them for a few days at the start of their honeymoon in a beautiful seaside cottage, I accepted. Lily was thrilled. Ben just smiled that perfect smile, but his eyes seemed to hold a flicker of something I couldn't decipher. Was it annoyance? The first day was idyllic. We walked on the beach, cooked dinner together, and laughed. Ben was the model son-in-law, attentive and charming. He'd bring me a blanket when the evening air got chilly. He'd remember I'd take my coffee with only a splash of milk. He was so thoughtful. It was almost rehearsed. I watched him, searching for a crack in the facade. He never lost his temper, never seemed flustered. He was a placid lake. But I suspected dangerous currents lurked beneath the surface. I started paying attention to the little things. The way he organized the bookshelf in their room, not by author or title, but by the color of the spines, creating a perfect rainbow. The way he cut his vegetables into exact, uniform cubes. Everything had to be just so. Lily found it endearing, calling it his little quirks. To me, it felt like a rigid, obsessive control. One afternoon, I accidentally knocked over a stack of his perfectly arranged magazines. He didn't say a word. Igust snelt his jaw tight and spent the next 10 minutes restacking them, making sure every corner was perfectly aligned. The silence was heavier than any angry outburst could have been. Tatvibinin, we played a board game. Ben, being a lawyer, was strategic and competitive, which was expected. But as the game progressed and I started to gain a slight lead, his demeanor shifted. The charming smile became a thin, tight line. His gaze on the board was so intense it was unnerving. When Lily made a move that inadvertently helped me, he placed his game piece down with a little too much force. A tiny, almost imperceptible click, but I saw the muscles in his neck tense. He was a man who hated to lose, even in a silly game. He needed to be in control of every outcome. The final morning, I woke up early and went for a walk on the beach. As primera returned, I saw Ben through the large kitchen window. He was alone, making coffee. He thought no one was watching. He pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, one for himself and one for Lily. He meticulously measured the coffee grounds for his own cup, then for Lily's. He took out a separate, small, unmarked canister from his briefcase. He carefully measured a fine, white powder from it and stirred it into her coffee, his movements precise and methodical. He then put the canister away, his expression completely neutral, as if he were simply adding sugar. My blood ran cold. The image burned into my mind. This wasn't a quirk. This wasn't a need for order. This was something else entirely. Something calculated and hidden. He then heard me at the door, and his face instantly transformed back into the warm, friendly Ben I was supposed to see. He turned, holding Lily's doctored mug, and offered it to me with a smile. "Morning, Carol!" I was just bringing this up to Lily. "Would you like a cup?" At that moment, I knew my little girl was in terrible danger, and her perfect husband was the cause. Primeta smiled back, a mask of my own, and replied, "No, thank you, Ben. I think I'll make my own." I had to act fast, but I couldn't let him know that I knew. I had seen behind the curtain, and I was terrified of what I'd find next. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more. The clinking of silverware on porcelain was the only sound for a moment, a fragile rhythm in the opulent dining room. I watched my daughter, radiant in a cream-colored dress, her face glowing in the candlelight. Across from her, my new son-in-law, Mark, smiled. It was a perfect picture. The kind you frame and hang on the wall. The kind you show to friends and say, "Aren't they happy?" But my smile felt like a mask, stretched too tight across my face. Something was wrong. It had started as a flicker, a tiny, nagging doubt during their whirlwind romance. Mark was everything a mother could wish for her daughter. He was successful, charming, and seemed to adore her. He'd swept into our lives like a character from a movie, and my daughter, Sarah, had fallen head over heels. I'd been happy for her. Truly, but there was a polish to him that seemed perfect, a smoothness that felt practiced. "Mom, are you okay?" Sarah's voice cut through my thoughts. "You've been staring at that breadbasket for 5 minutes." I forced a laugh, just admiring it. "Everything is so beautiful." I looked at Mark. "You've really outdone yourselves with this place. It's breathtaking." "Only the best for my wife," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze Sarah's hand. His eyes met mine over the flickering candle flame. They were warm, but there was something else there. Something I couldn't quite name. A glint of... what? Triumph. I remembered the day they announced their engagement. We were in our backyard, the smell of barbecue in the air. Mark had made a beautiful speech about destiny and soulmates. Everyone had cried, but later, when I was helping him clear the dishes, he'd said something odd. I'd mentioned how quickly everything had happened. He just smiled that perfect smile and said, "When you know what you want, you don't let anything stand in your way." It sounded romantic at the time. Now, it echoed in my mind with a sinister undertone. The waiter arrived with our main courses, a welcome distraction. As he set down my plate, I noticed Mark's kufla. It was a simple, silver square, but it was identical to one my late husband, David, had owned. A gift from his father. It had gone missing a few years after he passed away. I'd searched the house for months, heartbroken at the loss of such a sentimental piece. My fork clattered onto my plate. "Mom," Sarah gasped, startled. "What is it?" My heart was hammering against my ribs. It had to be a coincidence, a common design. But the knot in my stomach tightened. "Nothing, darling, just clumsy." I picked up my fork, my hand trembling slightly. I tried to focus on my food, but my gaze kept drifting back to that cufflink, glinting under the soft lights. I thought about the other little things, the way Mark would subtly steer conversations away from his past, the vague answers about his family, who were apparently all traveling indefinitely, the way he seemed to know things about our family finances, details I'd only ever discussed with David. I had dismissed it all as the paranoia of an overprotective mother, but now, all those little pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. "So, what's next for you two after this?" I asked, my voice strained, but steady. "Back to the city." "Actually," Mark began, his smile never wavering, "we were thinking of extending the trip, and Sarah and I have been talking about managing her inheritance. It seems like a lot for her to handle on her own." Alukdad made a direct challenge in his eyes. "I have some experience with investments. I'd be happy to take care of everything for her, to protect her." Protect her. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He wasn't looking at Sarah when he said it. He was looking straight at me. And in that moment, I knew. The charm was a weapon. The whirlwind romance was a strategy. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was an infiltration. My daughter wasn't on her honeymoon. She was in a beautifully decorated cage, and her keeper was sitting right across from her, wearing my dead husband's cufflink. My smile finally dropped. The perfect picture shattered. Now, the real fight would begin.